I never imagined that a simple breakfast could set the stage for the start of my new life. That morning, while I was preparing the meal for my children, the familiar sound of my cell phone vibrating broke my routine. At first I thought, just another message. A school reminder or some useless advertisement. But as I read the words on the screen, it felt as if the ground had vanished beneath my feet. The message read in a cold and definitive tone. Keep the kids. I'm moving to New York with my mistress. I've already taken all our money. The sender? Jake. The man with whom I built a life, the father of my children, the man I trusted. For a moment my heart raced with shock, but then a feeling of anger and determination took over. I could have allowed myself to cry, to lament, to feel destroyed. But at that very moment, I understood that Jake wanted to see me in tears, to believe that his betrayal and greed were stronger than me. He had no idea what was about to happen. Before we continue with the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is very important to us. Thank you very much. I remember every detail that little by little showed me the path of disloyalty. The new perfume, the constant trips to the gym, the new clothes that clashed with the carefree man he used to be. Gradually, the small changes became undeniable signs that something was wrong. And then came the irrefutable evidence. Receipts from expensive dinners, hotel reservations made with our credit card, and messages he deleted with almost instinctive speed. But the most devastating blow was discovering that his mistress was, in some way, part of my own family, Ashley, my niece. A 22-year-old young woman, half Jake's age and the age I would have been if he had been faithful. During family gatherings, the exchanged glances and smiles had already alerted me, but I ignored the signs, believing that my intuition would fail me. How could I have imagined that such discreet behavior would be the prelude to such a cruel betrayal? Instead of bursting into tears or screaming, I chose to remain calm. I knew that if I allowed the pain to take over, Jake would get exactly what he wanted. I decided then to transform that betrayal into the force that would drive my own redemption. I resolved that the best revenge would be the most complete one, making him pay for every lie and every act of infidelity. I began to act silently and meticulously. Deep down, I knew that to regain my dignity, I would have to plan every move with surgical precision. First, I opened a separate bank account, away from his eyes and influence. Gradually, I started transferring strategic amounts from our joint account to this new account, small sums that, carefully executed, allowed me to save what truly mattered. Every transfer was made without raising suspicion, in an almost ritualistic process of rebuilding. In addition, I began gathering proof of every transgression. I immediately saved screenshots of emails, photographed receipts, and jotted down details that would later serve as irrefutable evidence of his betrayal. At the same time, I consulted a divorce attorney, exposing the situation without reservation and receiving clear guidance on how to protect my rights and those of my children. And to leave no doubt, I installed a tracker on Jake's car. I needed to know where he was going, what plans he was making, and most importantly, to confirm his decision to run away with Ashley. While I was assembling this intricate puzzle of evidence, the message he had sent that morning echoed in my mind. Jake, with all his arrogance, believed that by taking the little money left in our account, he would be free to start a new life in New York. Little did he know that, at that very moment, he had only snatched the crumbs I deliberately left, while what truly belonged to me was already safe, far beyond his reach. I served breakfast to the children with the same serenity as always, but inside, a whirlwind of emotions consumed me. I knew that the time for truth was coming, and that every move I made now would be decisive for the future. When I replied to Jake's message with a simple bon voyage, I was sealing the beginning of a new era. He thought he had defeated me, but in reality I was already 3 steps ahead. As the sun began to light up the morning, I organized every detail with the precision of someone who knows there is no turning back. The car, which once symbolized our achievements, was registered solely in my name. The house, a result of my mother's inheritance, could never be contested by him. And to prevent him from continuing to fund his escapades and lies, I canceled the credit card before he could even think of using it. Every document saved, every bank transfer, every piece of evidence collected was like a brick building the wall that would separate the painful past from the promising future I envisioned. I knew that soon Jake's world would transform into complete chaos, and I would be there, calmly watching his downfall. At that very moment, I realized that his betrayal was not just a grave mistake, but an opportunity to be reborn. I decided right then and there that I would not allow his falsehoods to dictate the course of my life. From that day on, I would dedicate myself entirely to myself, to my children, and to the dream of starting over without the shadows of the past. I knew that while he would get lost in a sea of consequences, I would build a new existence, a life where truth and justice prevailed, and where my happiness would be the reflection of a victory won with intelligence and courage. The breakfast, the children's laughter, and every small detail of that day became the symbol of my rebirth. As I gazed at the horizon, feeling the warmth of the sun and the lightness of a new hope, I understood that it wasn't just about avenging a betrayal. It was about reaffirming my worth, my ability to overcome, and my irrevocable decision to never again be a victim of an unfaithful man's tricks. It was time for me to take the reins of my life, and with every step I took, I knew I was closer to the freedom I had always desired. Soon after his departure, as Jake landed in New York, I could already feel the weight of impending justice. He had arrived in a city that had always symbolized new opportunities for many, but for me, it was the stage where he would face the bitter consequences of his actions. I vividly remember the day I learned that he and Ashley had arrived at a luxurious five-star hotel. I allowed myself to imagine his smile, that expression of false confidence, believing that he was finally starting a life of freedom and excess. However, fate had other plans. No sooner had he settled in than, upon trying to use his credit card, he was confronted with reality. The card was declined. I, who had already cancelled all the means he used to sustain his lies, had prepared the ground for his downfall. I saw through the tracker I had installed on his car every movement, confirming the despair taking hold of him. He tried using other cards, 3 to be exact, but none passed the bank's security. With each frustrated attempt, I realized that his illusion of power and control was crumbling like a sandcastle at the shore. While he faced the humiliation of not being able to even pay for dinner, I watched from afar each step of his collapse with a calm that only the certainty of imminent justice could provide. I then decided to take the next step in my retaliation. I knew that the truth needed to be exposed forcefully, and that Ashley, the young woman who had been seduced by empty promises, deserved to know the extent of the betrayal. With firm hands and a resolute heart, I sent her an email with the subject, "Enjoy life with Jake. But first, take a look at this." I attached screenshots and documents that not only proved his infidelity but also revealed the entire network of lies he had woven, evidence that he was involved with other women, deceiving everyone around him. Ashley's reaction was swift. The initial shock, followed by a palpable anger, confirmed that the truth could not be hidden. As she processed what she saw, the desperate messages Jake sent me grew increasingly insistent. He pleaded, through tears and supplications, for a reconciliation, for an act of forgiveness that I was not willing to grant. Every message was ignored, every call left unanswered. For me, it was essential that he feel the same pain he had tried to inflict on me and our children. Meanwhile, I worked to reinforce all the legal measures that would safeguard me and preserve the assets we had built together. The car, the house, which would never be subject to dispute as it was a part of an inheritance, and even the credit card were all securely protected. My attorney closely monitored every detail, preparing the ground for a divorce that would mark the end of an era of lies and the beginning of a new phase of freedom. While Jake struggled in New York, his financial situation worsened by the minute. The hotel, which in his mind symbolized his new life, turned into a stage for humiliation. He who once saw himself as the protagonist of a success story, was now just a minor character in his own personal tragedy. And the tracker I kept running continued to send data showing that his routes were, in fact, a flight path, not one of conquest. Amidst this chaos, I felt a contained satisfaction. It wasn't that I celebrated his fall in a petty way. It was the feeling of seeing justice prevail. Every frustrated attempt to access money, every ignored call, every desperate message confirmed that he was irrevocably losing control. In my eyes, the man who once believed himself untouchable was now at the mercy of the consequences of his own actions. I shared the truth with friends, family, and even legal acquaintances. I explained, without mincing words, what had happened, exposing the stark reality of a betrayal that had cost not only financially but also in dignity and honor. Those who listened were impressed by my firm stance and recognized that, however harsh, justice was inevitable. While Jake, in the illusory opulence of New York, faced the increasingly bitter reality of being alone, I grew stronger. Every piece of evidence gathered, every document saved, contributed to the wall I had built in defense of my integrity. I knew the process would be long, but with each passing day, the sense of justice grew stronger, along with the certainty that I was on the right path toward a true new beginning. Thus, amid the cold transactions and the warmth of public exposure, Jake's fall was solidifying. He who had always considered himself the master of his destiny, now saw that his choices were leading him to an abyss of no return. And I, as I watched the destruction of the man I once loved, felt the liberation from an invisible prison, the prison of betrayal and suffering that he had imposed upon me. As the days passed, I realized that time itself was the greatest ally of justice. While Jake sank deeper into New York, struggling to pick himself up amidst humiliation and despair, every new dawn offered me a chance to start over. The divorce was finalized, and all the measures protecting what was mine, and what belonged to my children, had been sealed. The feeling of having taken control of my own life was liberating. With the house filled with the laughter and play of my children, every corner of our home transformed into a sanctuary of peace. I, who had lived for so long under the shadow of a devastating betrayal, began to feel the first signs of an inner rebirth. The pain that once seemed insurmountable was now a lesson, proof that true strength comes from overcoming. It was on a sunny afternoon in a cozy cafe that I met Daniel. He was an engineer, divorced, and a father to a delightful little girl. From the very first glance, I felt that, at last, someone saw in me the strong, determined woman I had always been. We talked for hours, sharing stories, fears, and dreams. In every word he spoke, I found the respect and attention I had longed for. By his side, I rediscovered the pleasure of feeling valued, of being heard, and above all, of believing in a promising future. While Daniel showed me that true love could blossom even after the darkest moments, I celebrated every small victory in my new daily life. Every therapy session, every sincere conversation with friends helped rebuild the identity I had lost over the years. The experience with Jake had transformed my view of the world. I understood that forgiveness was not for those who hurt us, but for ourselves, so that we could move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. Meanwhile, the news of Jake's downfall spread. In conversations, family gatherings, and even on social media, the truth emerged. He, the architect of his own ruin, was now seen as an example of what happens when one chooses betrayal and disloyalty. His attempts to reclaim his life proved futile, and loneliness became the sole consequence of his actions. I, on the other hand, felt a peace I never imagined possible. Every new day was celebrated with the knowledge that the past, no matter how painful, would not define my future. Reborn, I allowed myself to dream, to plan, and above all, to love again, without fears or constraints. Daniel became the symbol of a healthy and sincere new beginning, and together we began to write a new chapter, where happiness was built on truth, trust, and the freedom to be who we truly are. Gradually, I realized that true redemption wasn't about taking revenge on Jake, but about reclaiming my own essence. Every scar from the past turned into a mark of overcoming, a reminder that even in the face of the cruelest betrayal, it's possible to be reborn stronger. The house, once a stage for conflicts and sorrows, now vibrated with the positive energy of a life restarted. My children, who never fully understood the complexity of what happened, only knew that their mom was smiling again, and that was enough for me. Today, as I look back, I see that every step I took, every decision made, was essential to getting here. The journey was long and full of challenges, but I learned that true freedom comes from the courage to reinvent oneself. Jake is gone, taken away by the consequences of his actions, while I reinvented myself and finally found the peace I had always sought. Closing that chapter, I leave behind not only the image of an unfaithful man but an entire past that taught me to value truth, loyalty, and most importantly, self-love. Now, with a light heart and eyes fixed on the future, I move forward, knowing that no matter how hard the world tries to knock me down, I will always be able to rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. This is my story. The story of a woman who turned pain into power and who, in the end, discovered that the greatest act of revenge is to live fully, loving and being loved truly. What did you think of my story of overcoming and redemption? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and share what touched you the most on this journey. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and don't miss any of our impactful narratives.